You know, life has a funny way of surprising people. Back in high school, I was the quiet one, the shy girl in the corner of the yearbook, the one no one really noticed except when they wanted someone to tease. They called me names, laughed behind my back, and truth be told, it hurt. But time changes things. 10 years later, I built a life they couldn't even imagine. And when that reunion invite came in the mail, well, let's just say I had a little plan. No fancy dress, no designer purse, just me and a tiny card tucked in my pocket. They thought they knew who I was. They were wrong. So, if you're comfy, if you've got a warm blanket or a soft pillow nearby, lean back, close your eyes, because tonight, I'm going to tell you how I pretended to be poor at my class reunion. And what happened when I handed them my business card. My name's Emily Carter. I'm 28 years old, born and raised in a small town called Willow Creek, just north of Seattle. These days, I live in Vancouver, where I run my own digital marketing agency. 7 years in business, 5 full-time employees, 2 locations, and, well, a pretty good life. But back in high school, that was another story. I was nobody, the quiet scholarship kid. My parents ran a tiny hardware store. I wore thrift shop clothes, never had the latest phone or bag. And let's just say, I wasn't exactly homecoming queen material. There were cliques. You know, the type popular kids with parents in real estate, or local politics, or doctors with 3 vacation homes. And then there were kids like me. Background noise. When the 10-year reunion invitation landed in my mailbox, at first, I laughed. Why would I want to go back? But the more I thought about it, I realized maybe this was the perfect chance. Not for revenge. Exactly. I don't do drama, but maybe a little poetic justice. So I booked a flight, no first-class seat, no luggage that screamed money. I packed a simple suitcase, jeans, a soft old sweater, comfy sneakers, wore my favorite $15 thrift store jacket, no makeup, hair tied back, and in my wallet, a small stack of freshly printed business cards, black, clean font, no nonsense. Emily Carter, founder and CEO, Carter Digital Group. On the morning of the flight, I glanced in the mirror. Not exactly glamorous, but that was the point. I rented a compact car when I landed. No sports car, no flashy ride. Drove the familiar road back to Willow Creek, past the gas station where I used to buy snacks after school, past the strip mall where I once worked part-time. Funny, it looked smaller now. Or maybe I'd just grown. The reunion was being held at the same old Willow Creek Civic Hall. Beige walls, terrible lighting. I parked out back and took a deep breath. All right, Emily, I whispered. Let's see how much has really changed. Inside, the place buzzed with voices and laughter. A banner read Willow Creek High Class of 2015 10-year reunion. There were name tags at the check-in table. I spotted a few familiar faces right away. Jason Miller, former football star, now a little rounder, hair thinning. Heather Clark, the old queen bee, still holding court in a sparkly dress. A couple of others clustered around the punch bowl, talking about their kids and mortgages. No one noticed me at first. Perfect. I pinned on my name tag Emily Carter and stepped inside. Almost immediately, I heard it. A whisper, a laugh. Is that Emily? Wow, she looks exactly the same. Poor thing. I smiled softly to myself. Game on. The scent of stale coffee and cheap punch wafted through the hall, mixing with the light buzz of conversation and the occasional forced laugh. I could feel the familiar thrum of old anxiety creeping up my neck, but I pushed it down. I'd worked hard to build the life I had. Tonight wasn't about falling back into old patterns. It was about watching, observing, and maybe, just maybe, letting a few old wounds breathe. I made my way toward the back of the room, weaving past little clusters of former classmates. Hey, is that Emily Carter? A voice called. I turned. It was Mason Green, once the king of snide remarks and lunchtime pranks. He sauntered over, wearing a too-tight button-down and a smirk that hadn't aged a day. Wow, didn't think you'd show up, he said, glancing me up and down. Still rocking the, casual look. Huh, I chuckled softly. Nice to see you too, Mason. He blinked, as if surprised by my calm tone. Yeah. Well, some of us still live around here. he continued, puffing out his chest. You know, local business, family stuff. Good to stay connected. Sure, I replied, letting the words hang between us. A small group gathered nearby, Heather Clark among them, radiant in her sequined dress and a pair of heels that looked painful even from across the room. She spotted Mason talking to me, her eyes narrowing. With a flick of her hair, she sauntered over. Well, Heather drawled, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. If it isn't little Emily Carter, you haven't changed a bit. I gave a polite smile. Neither have you. Heather. That earned me a raised brow. Heather's entourage, 2 former cheerleaders. Now moms with matching designer bags hovered behind her, snickering under their breath. Did you move back to town? Heather asked, her tone casual but sharp around the edges. Or, are you just visiting? Just visiting, I said softly. Came up from Vancouver. Heather's smile tightened. Oh, Vancouver, she repeated, clearly unimpressed. Such a quaint little city. I didn't bother correcting her. No need to mention the agency. The clients, the 6-figure contracts. Not yet. Instead, I wandered toward the drinks table, pouring myself a paper cup of punch. I caught snippets of conversation as I passed. Did you see what she's wearing? She probably still works at that hardware store. Poor thing. Probably couldn't even afford a babysitter tonight. The words rolled off me like water. But they also stirred old memories, years of being the punchline, the outsider. Even now, it seemed some things never changed. The irony, these people thought they still held power over me. They didn't realize that the girl they remembered was long gone. Still, a part of me wondered, why did it still sting? Even a little. I sipped the punch, the sugary liquid doing little to ease the tightness in my chest. That's when I heard the laugh, a sharp, familiar cackle from across the room. I turned. Bradley Jacobs, once my worst tormentor, had just arrived. Still tall, still smug, still surrounded by lackeys who laughed at every word. And just like that, the old scars prickled anew. I took a deep breath. Not tonight. Emily, you're not that scared little girl anymore. Still. I couldn't help but brace myself. I knew the night was just getting started, and old games were about to be played once again. Bradley's voice cut through the air, sharper than the cheap plastic forks on the buffet table. Well? Look who crawled back to Willow Creek, he announced, loud enough for half the room to hear. Emily Carter. Or should I say, Miss Nobody. A few heads turned. Snickers followed. It was like being 17 again, caught in one of Bradley's little performances. He swaggered toward me, beer in hand, still playing the same tired role. Didn't think you'd show up? Carter, he said with a crooked grin. What's it been, 10 years? Huh, still rocking that budget chic look. More laughter. I smiled thinly, refusing to give him the reaction he wanted. Good to see you too, Bradley. He blinked, as if thrown by my calm. Heather drifted over, eyes gleaming with amusement. Bradley, don't tease her. She probably can't afford anything fancier. Yeah, he snorted, tipping back his beer. I mean, look at her. The little clique laughed again. For a second, that old, familiar ache rose in my chest. The same ache I'd carried through all those lonely years in high school. The endless teasing about my hand-me-down clothes, my second-hand books, my working-class parents. But then, something shifted. I caught my reflection in the glass doors, older, wiser, not that scared girl anymore, and tucked in my back pocket. My business card waited patiently. Not yet. I thought, let them play their games a little longer. I wandered through the room, listening. Poor thing. Bet she's still single? She probably works retail somewhere. Maybe she never left town at all. I bit back a smile. The assumptions were almost entertaining. Then, unexpectedly, a voice called softly. Emily. I turned, and there he was, Daniel Harper, my old crush, the boy I used to watch from across the library, who once helped me pick up a stack of fallen books. He looked different, older, of course, but there was a softness in his eyes. No smugness, no sharp edges, just quiet curiosity. Daniel, I said, surprised at how warm my voice sounded. He smiled. Wow, it's really good to see you. I blinked. You too? For a moment, the room seemed to fade. We stood there, two old classmates, awkward in the best possible way. "You look good," he said, and I could tell he meant it. "Did you move back here?" I hesitated. "Just visiting. Actually, from Vancouver." He nodded. "That's great. You always said you wanted to get out of here." I smiled, touched that he'd remembered, before I could say more. A sharp voice cut in. "Well, Will?" Heather sang, striding over, her heels clicking like a metronome of doom. "Catching up with old flames." "Emily." Daniel flushed. "We were just—" "Oh, how sweet," she cooed, glancing at me. "You know, Emily's done so well for herself. I hear she's freelancing these days." The sarcasm wasn't even subtle. Daniel shot Heather a look but said nothing. And just like that, the warmth of the moment flickered. I saw the hesitation in his eyes, the old high school social pressures creeping back in. Part of me wanted to just walk away, to leave this petty scene behind. But another part, the part that had built a company from nothing, whispered, "Not yet. Stay. Watch. Let them show you who they really are." And so I stayed. The night was far from over. I drifted away from Daniel and Heather's clique, weaving between tables and pockets of conversation. The hum of the reunion buzzed all around me. Old classmates catching up, awkward hugs, overly loud laughter. But beneath it all, an undercurrent of tension. Or maybe that was just me. I could feel the eyes, the sidelong glances, the not-so-quiet whispers trailing behind me wherever I walked. It was like high school all over again, except this time. I wasn't the same girl. I made my way toward a quieter corner of the hall, near a display of old yearbooks and faded class photos. I smiled softly at the sight of my own awkward, braces-clad face peeking out from the pages. "Guess we've both come a long way," I murmured to the photo. "You sure have." The voice startled me. I turned to find Daniel standing there again, a genuine smile on his face. "Sorry," he said. "Didn't mean to sneak up on you?" I chuckled. "No worries. Just revisiting old memories." He nodded, glancing at the display. "Hard to believe it's been 10 years. "Yeah," I said softly. "Some things change, some don't." He gave me a knowing look. I noticed Heather and Bradley, still stuck in the same old routines. That surprised me. I'd expected him to fall right back in with them. "You seem different," I said. Daniel laughed softly. "Yeah. Will, life has a way of humbling you. Spent a few years in the city. Tried corporate, didn't love it. Moved back here to teach." "A teacher?" I asked, genuinely impressed. He nodded. "Middle school. It's not glamorous, but it matters." I smiled. For a moment, the years seemed to slip away. Before either of us could say more, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Emily." I turned. Bradley, striding toward us with a wicked grin. "In case you didn't hear," he announced loudly, "there's a little friendly slideshow starting. All our best moments from high school." I frowned, something in his tone setting off alarms. Daniel glanced at me. "You okay?" I forced a smile. "I'm fine." But I wasn't. Not really. I had a feeling I knew exactly what kind of slideshow Bradley had prepared. And I was right. Moments later, the lights dimmed. A cheap projector flickered to life against the far wall. And there it was, photo after photo from high school. Most of it innocent enough. Pep rallies, football games, prom. But then the tone shifted. A grainy picture of me, alone at a lunch table. Another of me in an ill-fitting hand-me-down dress at the winter dance. One more, someone had clearly snapped it from behind a shot of me pushing a cart at my parents' hardware store. The captions, not so innocent. Miss Nobody's greatest hits. The Queen of Thrift. Future Retail Employee of the Month. The room erupted in laughter. Bradley's smug voice rang out. "Good times." "Huh." My heart pounded. Daniel looked horrified. "That's not funny." But Heather and her crew were in stitches. For a moment, the old pain surged. The helplessness, the humiliation. But then something steadied me. I wasn't that girl anymore. And this was their last gasp. I stood, calmly smoothed my sweater, and made my way to the front of the room. The laughter faded as people noticed. I could feel every eye on me. I took a breath. Time to decide. Walk away quietly, or remind them just how far I'd come. I stood there for a long second, feeling the weight of 100 stares. Some faces were openly amused Bradley and Heather's gang. Mostly, Some were uncomfortable, darting glances between me and the projector. And a few looked quietly ashamed. Daniel among them. I let the silence stretch just a little longer. Then, in the calmest voice I could manage, I said, "Well, I guess some things really haven't changed." A ripple of awkward laughter. Bradley grinned wider, thinking he'd won. "Oh, come on, Carter. Just having some fun. You can take a joke. Can't you?" "Of course," I replied smoothly. "Good to know you're still exactly where you were at 18. That got a few surprised chuckles from the crowd, some of whom were clearly no longer quite on Bradley's side. He blinked, as if thrown. "Hey, no hard feelings. I mean, look around, big reunion. We all turned out okay, right?" I smiled thinly. He wanted me to back down, laugh along, play the same role I'd always played. But I'd made my choice. I reached into the back pocket of my jeans. Fingers brushed the clean stack of business cards. I pulled one out. Black matte. Minimalist text. No frills. No nonsense. Emily Carter, founder and CEO, Carter Digital Group. I held it between two fingers and walked slowly toward Bradley. His grin faltered just a little. "What's that?" "Just a card," I said, my voice soft, but carrying, in case you ever need digital strategy or brand management. That is, if you ever move past high school pranks. I handed it to him. The room had gone still. A few people craned their necks to read it. Heather snatched the card from Bradley's fingers, eyes narrowing. "Wait, you run a company?" I smiled. 7 years now. Offices in Vancouver and Toronto. Clients in tech, fashion, media. It's been a good ride. A soft gasp rippled through the crowd. One of the former cheerleaders, Jessica, I think, blurted out, "You mean you're successful?" I raised an eyebrow. "Define successful." "I'm doing all right." Bradley looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. "Well, I mean, good for you." "Really?" I tilted my head. "Thanks. And by the way, next time you do a slideshow, maybe skip the personal shots. It's a bad look for someone trying to sell cars." A few people laughed, real laughter this time. Bradley's face flushed. "Yeah? No offense." "Of course." I smiled wider. "None taken." And just like that, the mood of the room shifted. The bullies weren't laughing anymore. The whispers turned into quiet murmurs. Eyes flicked between me and Bradley, and the balance of power subtly tipped. I felt my heart steady. The old fear gone. Daniel caught my eye from across the room. He gave a small, approving nod, and I knew I'd made the right choice. But the night wasn't over yet, because when tables turn, people start showing their true faces. It was fascinating to watch. A moment ago, I'd been invisible and afterthought, a target of lazy jokes and cheap laughs. Now, the entire dynamic of the room had shifted. I could almost feel it, like the change in air before a thunderstorm. Conversations stalled, heads turned. People whispered, not mocking this time, but curious. Calculating. Bradley, to his credit, attempted to recover. He stuffed my card into his jacket pocket with a forced chuckle. "Well, hey, good for you. Carter, that's great." He clapped me awkwardly on the shoulder, as if trying to reclaim some kind of dominance. It didn't work. The smirk was gone from his face. Heather, on the other hand, her gears were turning. She sashayed closer, her smile now syrupy sweet. "Emily," she purred, "you really should have said something earlier. We could have caught up properly." "I think we're catching up just fine," I replied with a soft smile. She laughed a little too brightly. "Of course. You must give me your number. Maybe we can do lunch sometime." Translation: maybe I can figure out how much you're really worth. I sipped my punch, letting the moment stretch. "Sure, maybe." Behind her, others began to stir. Former classmates who'd barely glanced at me earlier were now drifting over in 2s and 3s. "Emily, wow. I heard you run your own firm." "That's amazing. What industry again?" "You're in Vancouver." "My cousin just moved there." The questions tumbled out, voices eager, eyes bright. I answered politely, calmly, never bragging, just letting the facts land. "Yes." "I ran an agency." "Yes." "We worked with international clients." "Yes." "I traveled often." "Yes." Business was good. It was almost funny watching old bullies morph into wannabe friends in the blink of an eye. Bradley hovered on the sidelines now, clearly out of his depth. Heather clung tighter, her laugh a little too loud. Daniel approached again, cutting through the false cheer. "Mind if I rescue you?" he asked softly. I smiled in relief. "Please do." We stepped aside, near the edge of the hall. He shook his head. "I'm sorry about all that. The slideshow, the way they treated you." "It's fine," I said. "And I meant it." "Still," he said, looking earnestly into my eyes, "you didn't deserve any of it. Not then." "Not now." A warmth bloomed in my chest. "Thank you," I said quietly. A beat passed. Then Daniel grinned. "I have to say, you handled that like a pro." The card. "Brilliant move." I laughed softly. "Glad you think so." He glanced back toward the room. "You know, they're all scrambling now." "Oh," I noticed. We shared a smile. And even as the buzz of the room swirled behind us, old rivals jockeying for attention, fake friendships blossoming overnight, I felt something shift inside me. Not just the satisfaction of seeing them squirm, but something deeper. Closure. The scared girl I'd been was gone. And the woman standing here now, she wasn't afraid of them anymore. Not one bit. Still, there was one thing left to do. Because when the tables turn, sometimes it's nice to leave a lasting impression. I stayed near the edge of the room with Daniel for a few minutes longer, sipping what was probably my third cup of overly sweet punch. The buzz of conversation had changed completely. Gone was the smug laughter and careless gossip. Now, the tone was softer, more measured. And more than once, I caught snippets of my name floating through the air. "Did you hear? Emily's a CEO now. Apparently, she has offices in Toronto too. She looks so normal." Who would have guessed? The same people who had once dismissed me were now sneaking glances, calculating, trying to decide how to reposition themselves. A few bolder ones approached. "Emily, wow, so great to see you again," gushed Jessica, one of Heather's old cheerleader clique. "We really should keep in touch. I've been thinking about doing some online business. Maybe you could give me some tips." Her voice was honeyed, her smile too wide. I returned it politely. Of course, always happy to help, which was true. Mostly, but I wasn't about to let old wounds blind me to good boundaries. And speaking of boundaries, here came Heather, drink in hand, weaving gracefully through the crowd with practiced ease. "Emily, darling," she purred. "I was just thinking, we should definitely do lunch next week. I have so many friends in Vancouver. We could all meet, talk business." Her eyes gleamed with intent. I tilted my head, letting a beat of silence stretch just long enough. I said lightly. "My calendar's a little full these days, but you never know." A faint flush crept up her cheeks. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes anymore. Bradley, on the other hand, had retreated to the far side of the room. No more loud jokes or grandstanding, just quiet resentment simmering in the shadows. Daniel, still by my side, chuckled under his breath. "You know," he murmured, "I think you just turned this whole reunion upside down." I grinned. Wasn't really my plan, but I'm not complaining. Truthfully, I hadn't expected the shift to be so dramatic. It was fascinating, in a detached sort of way, like watching a stage play you'd once been trapped in. And now, finally, sitting in the front row, watching the actors scramble, another former classmate approached Mark, who'd barely spoken to me in high school. "Emily," he said, voice casual. "I run a small design firm here in town. We've been thinking of expanding online, maybe? If you had a moment sometime, we could chat." I smiled. "Feel free to email me. My assistant will set something up." He blinked, caught off guard by the mention of an assistant. Across the room, I caught Heather's eye again. Her polished mask was starting to crack tiny fissures of forced civility showing through. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The truth was, I didn't need revenge. Just being here standing tall, calm, unapologetically myself, that was enough. But before the night ended, there was one more thing I wanted to do. Daniel leaned closer. "You thinking of heading out soon?" "Yeah," I said softly. "But first," I reached into my pocket once more. "Another business card?" I crossed the room slowly, toward the old display table with the yearbooks and photos. Carefully, I tucked my card into the frame of our class photo front and center. A small act, subtle, but one that would be noticed and remembered. Sometimes, the quietest gestures leave the loudest echoes. I stood there for a moment, gazing at the class photo. It was a snapshot of a lifelong past awkward smiles, forced poses, clicks frozen in time, and in the corner, me, the girl no one had expected much from. And now, my little business card tucked beneath the glass said everything that words couldn't. I turned away, making my way back through the hall. The conversations had shifted again, quieter, more thoughtful. Eyes followed me, but now with curiosity, a little respect, maybe even regret. Heather was off to the side, whispering furiously to her friends, her polished mask showing deep cracks now. Bradley remained planted in the far corner, his once cocky posture reduced to slumped shoulders. I caught Daniel's gaze from across the room. He offered a small nod. I smiled. It was time. I walked toward the door, calm and unhurried. As I reached the exit, a voice called after me. "Emily." I paused. Turning, it was Heather. Her smile was brittle, her tone strained. "Leaving so soon?" I let the question hang for a beat. Then, with a gentle smile, I replied, "I've already gotten everything I came for." Her lips parted, but no words came. Without another glance, I stepped through the doors into the cool night air. The crisp breeze brushed my face, fresh and sharp. Above, the stars shimmered in the dark sky, clear and unjudging. I breathed deep, a quiet satisfaction settling in my chest. I hadn't come for vengeance, not really. I'd come to face the ghosts of the past, and to remind myself that they no longer held power over me. And maybe, just maybe, to show them without fanfare, without spite, exactly who I'd become. The road ahead was still mine to walk, and tonight, I walked it on my own terms. So, if you're listening to this, wherever you are, remember, it's not about proving yourself to others. It's about knowing your own worth and carrying that quietly, confidently, through every room you enter, even if that room happens to be your 10-year high school reunion. Sleep well, my friend. You've come farther than you think, and tomorrow, the world is yours.